Just a reminder, you can catch me recording this podcast live on AMP. AMP is a new live radio app that lets you call in and chat with me in person while recording. Get the app on Apple's App Store and make sure you follow me at John Middlekauff to get notified when I go live. Back at it again with my main man, Sobel. We got breaking news all over the golf world late Monday night. But before we dive in to the never-ending saga of LIV, PGA Tour, the PIF, go to your smartphone, download the Gametime app. You want to watch one of these last LIV events coming down the home stretch? Do you want to go to a golf event? Do you want to go to a football game, concerts, comedy shows? Download the Gametime app on your smartphone. Promo code John, John, promo code GOLO. GOLO, this is GOLO, baby. And get $20 off. We got a lot of promo codes out there. Hammer those things. Enjoy yourself and do it on us. Promo code GOLO. Download the Gametime app. And go watch golf like Sobel did. Sobel, lot going on, a lot of moving parts, but I'm going to start you with this.
Okay.
If Phil Mickelson never wants to grace the presence of a non-major again, I do think he could pretty easily. Now it'd be pretty niche, but he runs in these circles. Give lessons, like day lessons, to the super rich people all over the world and charge like a couple $100,000. He is clearly a great teacher. He knows golf as well as anyone. He can articulate it. He can teach it. We've seen him on social media. There is no reason for him ever to play the John Deere or Waste Man. He can just coach up random multi-millionaires and billionaires and make his money that way. What do you think?
I can see it. You get a Callaway driver and a cup of coffee while you're on the range with Phil, and we have a whole total package, and he might even give you some tips on that night's game, and which side he likes on the spread. I don't know. Stranger things have happened. I think it's the other way for Phil. You seem to think Phil's like he's never going back to the PGA Tour. I think it's the other way around, that once all this happens and once the LIV players are essentially integrated back into the PGA Tour, that Phil comes back and he goes, all hail me. I was able to get everyone back together. I made money for the PGA Tour players. You're welcome, everybody. Look what I did.
What the news broke Monday night. It's, about noon East Coast time for you, texting around. Obviously, this has been a point of a talking point now for a couple weeks since the CNBC interview. I guess we have some more details. So far, what do you think as of the last 12 hours with the breaking news to kind of put some parameters around this potential merger / acquisition / who knows?
Yeah, / whatever it is. Don't call it a merger. I guess the one thing that stands out to me, which isn't really that much of a standout, is the fact that, I guess Monahan and Al Ramayan and Jimmy Dunn and everybody else that spoke a few weeks ago, they weren't trying to pass anything off as not like this is what it was. It's, hey, we've got a framework agreement. There are a ton of details that we still don't know. The PGA Tour is essentially going to run LIV in whatever way LIV is going to exist moving forward. And that's the deal. And we'll figure out the rest of it later. And once you read the agreement, you're like, yeah, that's exactly what it says. It's not like they came out and said all these things. Then you read the agreement and you're like, whoa, we didn't see any of that coming. Essentially, everything we knew. If you've been paying attention the last 3 or 4 weeks, there shouldn't be anything in there that you're looking at saying, that doesn't make any sense to me. I think there's still obviously questions, but I think they're the same questions we've been asking since that day that they announced the, like I said, merger. Don't call it a merger. By the way, John, I've got to ask you the question. Now, I assume this is in legalese the same way as if there's like a body found, they don't know who it is, and they call it John Doe or Jane Doe. Yeah. I assume that having a company and putting it into a legal document and calling it NewCo is just sort of the
placeholder
for what it's going to be later. All of that said, I'm rooting so hard for this company to be called NewCo that I can't even tell you. I mean, I will buy NewCo gear. I will buy NewCo hats. I mean, I will be decked out in NewCo if that's what we can call this thing. I just find that hilarious. The fact that, I mean, it's out of succession. the entire thing is straight out of a script from Succession, including it's a merger, but don't call it a merger, but we don't know what it is, and we don't have a company name. I mean, the whole thing is exactly out of that.
I would say the one thing that wasn't out of Succession, because in Succession, when they there was like real money. Obviously, these players have been getting real money this year winning these elevated events. But it kind of now, when you see the desperation of the tour, this was not a sustainable model. It was almost like an Enron or an Elizabeth Holmes. Like, it was kind of fake. So some of the, I'm obviously the money was there, but it was not a sustain. Like, they could not have kept rocking and rolling for these purses given the way they were operating. I know you've been on their podcast before. Nate Hubbard tweeted out last night. It's pretty clear that the tour had a major money problem and PIF had a major image problem. they basically merged and came together to help each other head in the right direction. Again, I'm not saying Keegan Bradley didn't just earn $3.6 million or Brian Harman 1.8 to finish second, but like this wasn't that they couldn't have kept going if PIF didn't exist at these numbers, given how many people. I love golf, but we all know this isn't the NFL. There's 3 or 4 million people watching. That does not equal those prizes.
I feel like the PGA Tour made these designated events, and they had to do it, or else they were going to lose more
players. Had no choice. Yeah, I don't blame them.
Very good players. They created these designated events. They raised all the purses. They took the money not from sponsors. The sponsors aren't going to say, "Oh, we were paying $6 million. Now we're going to pay $25 million." Like, sure, no problem. Like, they're not doing that, so it's coming out of the PGA Tour's own purse. And I feel like they didn't do the math on everything. I feel like it's one of those deals where you have like a fan that sends a tweet and goes, "Hey, we should do this." I've heard people say, and I love the idea that all PGA Tour players, even if you miss the cut, you should get 10 grand if you miss the cut. And that's like, that doesn't sound out of the realm of possibility. That seems like, and then you go, well, there could be on any given week like 80 guys who miss the cut, let's say, on average. Well, that's what? Do the math for me. 800,000, and all of a sudden you've got 40 events, 50 events a year, and you start doing the math on that, and you're like, oh, that's a lot of money. Where are we getting that money from? Like, one at a time, doling out 10K isn't that bad. But when you start doing all the math for the entire year and you go through everything, you're like, wait a second, that's a lot of money that we're handing out. We don't necessarily have that money. And I feel like it's the same way for all these events. Like, they had to do it, and I get it. It's, Darwinism, like, hey, we've got to figure out a way to survive in this brave new world. But once they started doing that, it's like, oh, wait a second. Like, we're giving out $20 million purses like 9 times a year. Like, at some point, this thing's going to come crashing down. And yeah, there's no doubt in my mind. There were 2 things. Look, first is PGA Tour was going to have financial problems. The Public Investment Fund obviously had image problems. Hey, let's get together. And it's going to be beneficial for both parties. The second thing was they were going to go through this discovery phase of the litigation. And PGA Tour was like, there's stuff that we don't want to get out, whether it's antitrust stuff, whether it's other internal things. We can't have this made public. Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia also was like, hey, you know what? We've actually done some things too. You wouldn't believe this, but we've got some things we don't want public either. So we don't want those to come out. I think it was a combination of those 2 things that go, hey, you want to just like get together on this thing? And that's kind of how this all went down.
Did you, I'm sure you did, saw the article on Cantlay trying to run a coup. And what was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Eamon Lynch, who I really respect and does a really good job and used a lot of really big words. I mean, thesaurus.com was getting worn out on his laptop when he wrote that piece, but that seemed, though, overstating it a little bit. We're going to call this a coup? Like, I don't know. It seems to me like, reading between the lines, Patrick Cantlay is trying to stick up for the membership, and he's got an idea. Other people have other ideas, and he's just trying to throw his idea out there. It didn't seem like any sort of staging of a coup, and I'm not really sure exactly where that ire is coming from, where he's so mad about what's going on. I get it. That's kind of his shtick. And again, I really like Eamon. I think he's really, really talented. That said, I just didn't quite get that one. I read it and I'm like, I'm not really sure why. Are we just mad now at everything and everyone? But I didn't quite get why we were mad at Cantlay for that.
You've been in this business a long time, and the partnerships with tours and leagues, and you've seen it from obviously at ESPN and Golf Channel. It's a little more independent, probably what you're doing now. It's a little different just having broadcasts, not having them now at Action Network. So you can probably say whatever you want, but you're serious. You guys are in bed with the tour. I do wonder, and I understand PIF is not going to own NBC, which essentially owns the Golf Channel, but guys like Brandel and Eamon Lynch, who spend a lot of time on there, they have not backed down. And it felt like they've doubled down, and they're not alone. I mean, there are other people. Listen, I've seen it in football. You just, where the money comes from, likes to control. And I'm not saying the propaganda, like control the narrative, but you're not just allowed to just keep unloading the clip 24/7. I got that one circled, is that there is going to be just something to keep an eye on. That would be my thing.
Two things here. First of all, I worked with Brandel for 4 years at Golf Channel. He's one of the most asked about people when someone learns what I do and we're going off on the first date. What's Tiger like? What's Phil like? It's what's Brandel like is one of the first ones. And I will tell you that he is one of the hardest working analysts that I've ever worked with. And I worked in TV for a long time. I also think that he is one of the more intelligent and thought-provoking analysts that I've ever worked with. All that said, I also worked at Golf Channel. I know how Golf Channel operates, and you're exactly right that at some point they're going to go, hey, this is our business, and we can't have people on TV who are essentially knocking what our rights holder fees are going towards. And so I understand both sides of that. Look, back in the day, their way around this was when I first started at Golf Channel, anyone who's a little controversial on TV, they wouldn't be. And this is a little behind the scenes, pulling the curtain back a little bit for people out there who remember Golf Channel about 12 years ago. But anything that was a little controversial, any person who would have been controversial on TV, they weren't an employee. They were all freelanced contractors. And so whether it was a John Hawkins or a Jeff Root or Alex Maselli who would go on TV and spew opinions that maybe the brass didn't like and maybe the PGA Tour didn't like, Golf Channel's out was by telling them, well, sorry, they don't work for us. They just, we just cut them a check to come on TV, but that's not our guy, so we can't tell them what to say, which was always the weakest cop-out, I thought. First of all, so you're not going to pay those guys to be on staff, even though they're providing content for you on a daily basis? That's weak. Secondly, you're just going to say like, oh, we don't have any control. Sorry. Like they show up in your studio and start talking like you're the one that put them on TV. All of that said, yeah, I can certainly see. I get where you're going with that. I can see Golf Channel sort of veering them in a different direction. And I don't think it will be like, hey, Brandel, hey, Eamon, we're going to tell you what to say, because they won't do that. And I'm telling you right now, they won't do that. But it might be all of a sudden they find themselves being asked questions, not necessarily about LIV and the PIF and what's going on, but more about golf. And so they can't steer the conversation in those directions when they're on the air. I can see that.
Well, no one has the answers right now. They might not even have them behind the scenes in terms of how this is going to come back together. But it's pretty clear that LIV is in major trouble after when you read last night that the tour now controls. So let's just think about, even if we cut off some of the guys over 40 plus and 45, the Westwoods and the Poulters and the Phils, if they're not dying to come back, the obviously the Brooks, the DJs, the Joaquins, the guys that Cam Smith, Brysons, who are still can like win majors. Yep. The tour's going to want those guys for competitive reasons. Just the part of their business. It feels like it's going to get very interesting. And I already got Bryson circled for something weird to happen. There have been because there have been talks about fines and sanctions.
Well, that's the middle of the bingo card there. I mean, that's not even like going out on a limb.
But I do like, how do you find me? If I'm Bryson, you're finding me. I understand if I leave for a competitor and then I want to come back and those competitors, we're still separate. But you're now in business with the guy I left for. We're all under the same umbrella. So unless PIF wants their money back, that's between me and them. But you're now doing business with who I did business with. So it's very, very complicated, but it's pretty clear. Like they keep saying this and it keeps getting out there. There are going to be repercussions for the guys that left.
Yeah, Look, I think they have to say that to placate the current PGA Tour players, the loyalists, those who you listen to Monahan and the others with the PGA Tour and said, "Hey, I have integrity. I'm not going over there." And those that are mad about it right now, I don't think they can go to them and say, "Hey, we made a deal with them, so yeah, Brooks is just going to get like a $20,000 fine that he's not even going to pay himself, and he's going to be back in January." I don't think they can say that right now, but I have a feeling that's what it's going to come down to. Look, you're not going to build a partnership with players from another league and bring them in and go, "Hey, by the way, we're now partners. Like, we're all in this together. We'd love to have you back. Also, you're going to serve a 2-year suspension for what you did." Like, that's not happening. It's just not happening.
Or you each owe us $17 million in quarterly increments.
Yeah, right. I mean, like, I'd be like, no, forget it. I just won't play. All of that said, when we talk about LIV going away, I do think that whether it's January, whether it's June next year at some point, again, this is all speculation. I do think that Brooks and Cam Smith and DJ and whoever else will be playing essentially in PGA Tour events once again.
I agree.
That everyone will be integrated back into the same society and they will all be competing together. Now, there's no secret about the fact that there's going to be team events. And so whether it's a team aspect, whether it's team events, whether it's like LIV is now, where there's just teams within the individual contest, there's going to be a team concept. I would say that, and again, just a working theory, everyone thinks LIV is going away, like LIV won't exist. What if the teams exist on LIV and the individuals exist in the PGA Tour? And so essentially, let's go to the Farmers Insurance Open next January, where we've got the best of the best competing against each other. It's an individual stroke play 72-hole event, but all of a sudden we've got these 4-man teams. And so you and I talked about it before we hit the record button on this, but Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, Ricky Fowler, and I don't know, Jason Day, for lack of a better answer. They're a team. They're the Cool Dudes LLC, presented by AT&T and Travis Matthew. And so that's their team name. And yes, that will be for profit, and they will be able to sell merchandise and, you know, and collect on having their own team. They all play very much like LIV. They all play at Torrey Pines. There's a winner, just like we've had on the PGA Tour for a million years, but there's also a team winner, and maybe the team aspect is still LIV. Maybe LIV is a full just team league. I don't know. Again, speculation. I have no idea. Maybe LIV just goes away. But the way Greg Norman was talking that, hey, there will be a LIV, that's the loophole. That's the loophole I see with LIV doesn't go away. It continues, but it continues as part of the PGA Tour in those team aspects.
Well, LIV's playing this week, and I just don't think anyone cares. So coming down, we won't talk about the Valhalla that Sergio won't shut up about, which seems like a pretty good course looking online. You remember years ago when Kyler Murray was drafted by Billy Beane in baseball, and then he went on to have this incredible football season. People were like, what's he going to do? It's like, well, he's going to go play football because you go right to the professional level. And then golf, there have been some positive things that have come out of this whole controversy, right? And this PGA Tour, you just send your Kyler Murray goes right to the PGA Tour. And even some of the other guys get to go right to the Korn Ferry, and hell, they're rattling off wins. So, I mean, the cream is rising. You picked Ludwig this week, who was basically the Heisman Trophy elite player in college golf. I bet him last week. I've bet him again this week. I mean, he was off a little bit and was T25 last week. Listen, I think he's kind of got the burn, Scotty Scheffler. He's going to win. We don't know when, but like it could come sooner or later, especially my theory. I just saw you pick him. I didn't read what you said, but a lot of these guys got to be kind of running on fumes. They've been playing all year long, and he's got to be kind of refreshed.
So I go back to 2019. Remember that summer we had the big group of college kids who came out and turned pro and were getting exemptions everywhere.
Hovland, Morikawa, Wolf.
Yeah, exactly. Almost immediately, Matthew Wolff wins the 3M Open in Minnesota, and then Colin Morikawa wins the Barracuda Championship in Reno. And all of a sudden, we've got two of these guys like they've won right away. Well, is it because they're just that much better than everyone else? Well, yeah. I mean, as it turns out, Wolff was very good for a while, and who knows what he will be in the future. Colin Morikawa was on the verge of becoming one of the world's best players. Yes, that's part of it. You're not going to win these things if you're an average player, but I think there's a huge point to be made that these guys, first of all, the veterans are like running on fumes. These guys are, they're guys playing this week. They played 11 weeks in a row or something. Like, these guys are just dying out there at this point. Like, I just want to go sleep in my own bed. And then the other part of this is there are players who are playing as if there's something to lose. They're playing with a weight on their shoulder. They're playing with a thought in their mind of, if I don't play well this week or next week or the week after, like, I'm going to lose my job. Like, it's getting to be that point where, like, I'm not going to make the playoffs. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose my card. And it's really hard to find success in those situations. And so you've got Ludwig Aberg, who's the type of player right now that's basically playing with free money. He's playing with house money this week. He can go out there and just hammer driver all over the place. It's that kind of golf course. We've seen Bryson, Cam Davis, Tony Finau win the last 3 editions of this event. That tells you all you need to know. Just guys who smash driver and go hit it again. And so Aberg can certainly do that. I really like him this week. I am very invested. And I think what it does when you're not betting a guy who's a Scotty Scheffler, a John Rahm, who might be 10-1, 12-1, 15-1, what it does is opens up more long shots too. So I like, and what I've done this week is start the card with Aberg, who's right around 50-1 right now, and add an Austin Eckroat who's about 60, started at 80, and then add a few other players down the line. You can add more long shots. I think if you're betting Scheffler at plus 650, you can't be like, well, I'm also going to have these 9 outrights on long shots too. It's like, no, it doesn't really work that way. It's math. Math doesn't work. But when you're starting the card at a 50-1, you can add more of those players. So that's what I've done this week.
You got any other names in the 70, 80, 100-1 that you kind of Justin Sull was a name that kind of jumped out to me. Carson Young, I've seen Carson Young kind of moving up the leaderboard. So just a longer shot.
Not a great driver of the golf ball. He does his damage more with approach. I'm looking at guys who are like top 20 to 30 on the strokes gained off the tee list. I mean, that's
gotcha.
There's a definitive
tight course.
trend. No, it's like wide open,
so you could bomb it.
Hammer driver and like go find it and hit it again. And so I remember before the second edition of this event, talking to a player, I'm like, what'd you see last year? During the first one, he goes, it's the most Bryson course we've ever played. And so that doesn't take a whole lot of translating. It's go out there and smash and go find it and hit it again. So some of the big hitters that I like this week, Taylor Pendrith, who's had a pretty terrible season by his standards, only one top 10 finish, but he was second here last year. He was tied for the 54-hole lead. Adam Schenk, who's got a couple of runner-up finishes. He's sort of this all-or-nothing type player. It's like last 10 starts, 2 runner-up finishes, 6 missed cuts. Hey, but if I'm playing him for an outright, I don't really care if he misses the cut, as long as he also gives me that ceiling chance as well. Callum Tarrant started playing well last week.
Yeah.
I'll have a little bit of him. I mean, it's those kind of guys. And I mentioned Austin Eckroat. He's a guy that everyone liked coming out of the U.S. Open, finished 10th, went to the Travelers last week, finished 24th, and made a couple of mistakes at the end. But he's a guy that is playing some really good golf right now.
I did think we'll end it on this. The Keegan moment, obviously, that greater New England just loves their sports. And he's always been, before I knew that much about him as a player, beside kind of the weird stance, and he was tall, lanky, it just looked different than everyone else. It's just the Red Sox hat, the Patriots, obviously buddies with Michael Jordan. He just feels, and he's very open about how passionate he is about the area. And that felt, I mean, he kind of went a little old school, like a Tiger Woods or Spieth or Rory, just kind of kicked everyone's ass start to finish. I mean, the course was playing easy, but pedal to the metal. They got a little close on Sunday, but not really. I mean, it was going to be hard because there weren't really doubles out there. I mean, he was making a couple bogeys in a row, but you've been around him for a long time. It really does feel these last couple of years he's playing at a pretty high level, and now he's put himself in position to be on this Ryder Cup team.
He's been really good tee to green for a long time. The knock on Keegan was always that he couldn't make putts when it mattered. He was an anchored putter guy a long time ago, and he had to switch mid-career, and it's taken him a while to get to the point where he's at right now. But the putter looked really good this past week. And yeah, like you mentioned, this is not a guy who's like, oh yeah, I grew up in New England. Like, Sox are cool. Yeah, Patriots. Yeah, I haven't followed them in a while, but yeah, I mean, if I'm a fan of it, it's like, no, he's all in. I mean, I think we all know that no Keegan Bradley. I will tell you that I sent him just a little text message saying congratulations on Sunday night, and I got a text message back while I was on the air doing my show yesterday. Would you like to guess at what the text message back? It's the most Keegan Bradley text message ever, which I'm sure he sent to all 3,000 people that texted him Sunday night, like me, and probably just copied pasted. But it is a GIF of Tom Brady yelling "Let's go" as he runs on the field in Patriots jersey. I mean, that's the most Keegan text back to that text message that he got, which is, it's perfect for him. But look, playing some good golf. You mentioned the Ryder Cup. I don't think he's a lock yet. I know that's been a main motivation for him this year is to get back on that team. The way I see it right now, there's probably a good 15 candidates.
Yeah,
without
really are.
the next 2 months happening. And, Harris English goes and wins 2 events in the next 2 months. Billy Horschel, whoever, all of a sudden you're like, oh, that changes things. But right now I've got about 15 guys. 12 of those 15 are going to make the team. Keegan's 7th on the points list right now. I would say if it ended right now, he makes the team, but who knows what happens in the next 2 months.
Well, I think what gets tough is guys like, Finau, who for his standards kind of been down, and guys like Ricky, obviously Wyndham Clark's probably on it, but Ricky and Keegan Bradley, who have just played well pretty consistently start to finish, and then Keegan now wins an event. Ricky easily could have. It's going to be hard to keep these guys that have a really good season resume based on these guys with huge names.
Dustin Johnson is a massive wild card. They don't want to necessarily put the LIV players on the team. Koepka's probably earned his way onto that team. You look at DJ and you go, I don't know. He's played the majors. He's been okay. I don't really know what's going on. But
when him and Morikawa were such a dominant team the last time, right?
Exactly. Cam Young is not playing well right now. I can't imagine that if he doesn't turn things around in a big way, he's going to make this team. Sam Burns won the match play. I mean, there's no greater barometer of how are we going to play mano a mano at the Ryder Cup.
Didn't he beat Scotty Scheffler straight up?
He might not make the team. I mean, look at it. He is one of the questionables right now towards the bottom of that roster.
Do you think it matters because the course being in Europe a little different than if it was an American course where we just lean the bombers, where you can take you're more inclined to we're going to go Ricky over Tony or, something like that, given that it's more of a, I don't want to say pitch and putt, but it's just going to be a lot different than a couple years ago when Tiger was the captain. I guess that was the President's Cup when they played that in Australia. It's just a lot different than what we're used to over here, the Bombers' Paradises. So
it's 2 different questions. Do I think it matters as far as the makeup of the team? Yes, of course. You've got to have horses for the course. We do this every week. We prognosticate based on who fits that model of what the course is. That said, is Zach Johnson and his cadre of assistants, are they going to base their 6 wildcard selections on who fits the course the best? Not so sure. I think there's a certain arrogance with the U.S. team a little bit that they say, you know what, these guys are so good. They've had success on every course in the world. It doesn't matter. And to be honest, they're probably not wrong. I mean, Tony Finau plays short golf courses really well. And so Sam Burns has played well on some shorter golf courses. I don't know that they're necessarily wrong, but my guess is, yes. Does it matter? Of course. Of course, course fit matters when you're playing an event. Are they going to look deep into that and take a guy that you go, ooh, that's a little interesting, even though this other guy's played better? No, it's going to be essentially, it's going to be very close to the next 6 on the points list, and they're going to go right down there and not upset the apple cart too much.
Well, Sobel, have a good 4th of July. Have a good little breather now for a couple weeks with golf kind of slowing down, and then we'll lock back in Hoylake, probably a little less than a month away. So let's enjoy ourselves. Have a couple beers on me. Not literally.
We'll do that. Gonna be sitting at the beach all next week. Yeah, I can't wait. And by the way, I've made some Open Championship bets already. So just throw that out.
Quick name on your way out. You got a name?
Victor Hovland.
I like it. I peeked at that about a month ago when I saw it 30-1. What'd you get him at?
I got him a little less than that. I think he's like 20, 22 right now.
Yeah, he's moved up.
A little Tyrrell Hatton on there and some Ricky Fowler. So those are the three names that I just jumped on early. They were up in my book. My book doesn't have everything all the time, and it's not a normal book. So in any case, I saw it up there and I was like, I got to jump on some things early.
I like it. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, buddy.